Yes, 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 absolutely yes. Hi guys, welcome back to Ryan Reviews, and today I am going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. After my first experience playing this game, I played it, I beat it on original Nintendo 64, and I did this in 2019. I did use a walkthrough for a majority of, not a majority, but a good portion of sections that I got stuck on. I ended up using a walkthrough for, but I only used walkthroughs to give me little hints, and I tried to do it as blindly as possible without getting infuriated. And yes, I can say that yes, wow, I wouldn't necessarily say this is the greatest game of all time. This game definitely deserves a ton of praise and has held up considerably well, considering the time. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, first-time player perspective. Here we go. Alright, so to give you a little bit of background, I did not grow up with video games. Now, a lot of people tend to give me flack for this, and this is something that, obviously, I didn't grow up with Ocarina of Time. I wasn't alive in 1998, and even if I was, I would have been probably not grown up with it. But going back to video games in general, a lot of my first exposure to games outside of arcade-type games or plug-and-play games was in 2016, when my friend had her Wii and was playing some Mario Galaxy on it, which is still my favorite game of all time. I'm streaming that right now on Periscope. Go over there and watch, not this second, but when I do stream, follow me on Twitter, yada yada yada, whatever. Okay, but this game. Anyway, I became a big Mario fan, and I got really into Mario, and because I got really into Mario, I wasn't able to get into Zelda for a while. This is something that I had always had an issue with, and I have tried to play this game many times. Now, I no longer own a 3DS, but when I did own it, I tried a couple times to get into the game and never got past the first dungeon. I think I never got past the tutorial area in the N64 version the first time I tried it way back. Now, a little bit more recently, I did get up to the second dungeon, and in this game, when I tried to play through it, and I ended up using a walkthrough very strictly to do everything, which kind of made it not fun, and I would get confused trying to follow the walkthrough. This playthrough, I tried to do it more blind and just go into it. I did end up needing a walkthrough for certain things, but I ended up using the walkthrough more as hints to where to go and not reading directly, oh, you have to go here. And that ended up doing me a lot of favors. Now, in terms of the game, how well it's held up and how fun it is, it really depends on what kind of game you like. Now, I was into Mario, I still am into Mario, and because I'm used to fast-paced platforming, and transitioning to something a lot slower paced was very hard for me. Now, if you play something like Super Mario 64, you just get right into it. There's not a lot of downtime, there's a little bit of text and exposition, but you can kind of run around and go wherever you want from the get-go, just explore the playground that is the castle, and just kind of run around as long as you want and stuff. Now, Ocarina of Time operates a little bit differently. It's more narrative-driven, first of all, which means more cutscenes that you can't skip, and more text scrolling, which unfortunately can be kind of slow. Now, walking around is generally slower than it is in Mario, and your acrobatics are much more limited. Of course, Link is better at combat than Mario, who just punches and kicks things. But Link, he can't jump unless you jump off ledges, which is a thing that you can do in this game. Now, I'm saying this because, again, jumping off ledges is something that happens automatically, and you can't jump. There's not a dedicated jump button in this game, which is kind of frustrating on my first playthrough, getting used to games that don't have a dedicated jump button. I'm used to side-scrollers, and side-scrollers pretty much all have a jump button. Most of those games, something like Super Metroid or Mario or Yoshi's Island or Sonic the Hedgehog, all those types of games are based around having a jump button. And the only 3D games I really dug deep into were Mario games, and Mario games have jump buttons, and they're all built around jumping. So playing a 3D game that wasn't focused around jumping and action was kind of a little bit jarring for me. Now, Now, the other thing is that I have played a lot of Breath of the Wild. I do own a Wii U. I don't own a Switch, but I do own a Wii U. Not up here. My dad, it's downstairs. My dad has it. But I have played a ton of Breath of the Wild, and I actually haven't beaten that game, but I haven't beaten that game because I just like to wander around in it. I've done a lot of the story objectives, but anyway. Now, Breath of the Wild is a completely open-ended game. I tried to get into Zelda for a couple other games, and I just couldn't. Breath of the Wild being a completely open-ended game is something that let me jump, let me climb up anything, let me explore, run around at pretty fast speeds. It has a run button, it has a climb button, you can do all this stuff. Now, Ocarina of Time doesn't have that. You walk at a pretty fixed speed, and, in general, the game is just, not very fast to control, and the moveset isn't as versatile. So, coming from Breath of the Wild and coming from Mario games and stuff, getting into this took some time, but once I got into it, oh boy was I hooked. Now, this game is narrative driven, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but gameplay-wise, it's basically split into two sections, the child portion and the adult portion. There are 3 child dungeons and 5 adult dungeons, not counting the final area. Now, I will say that, in general, the story worked pretty well for me. I do enjoy the plot of this game. It's a little more in-depth than something like Super Mario 64. I actually felt like I had some emotional connection to some of what was going on in this story, and some of the twists that I didn't necessarily see coming spun me for a loop, even though I was mostly spoiled and didn't mostly know how the game was going to end, just from watching videos and stuff. But there were some things which kind of did end up taking me by surprise, and I won't go into spoilers here in case you somehow don't know what happens in the game, but I really like, the musical aspect of the game. That's something that I will get into in a little more, but story-wise, there's not a lot there in terms of NPCs and stuff. The main story-driven narrative featuring Link and Zelda and Ganondorf is pretty interesting, and it's not anything too flashy, but it doesn't need to be. The aspects of aging in the game, dealing with growing up and becoming a capable warrior as adult Link, dealing with growing up in these types of games, it's a good story point that works. Now, getting into the gameplay itself, super fun. Now, one of my minor issues is that you can't really control the camera like you can in Mario 64. The only thing you can really do is lock it behind you, but it's a shockingly well-working automatic camera system. Now, it's not 100% perfect for sure, but it works way better than I would expect it to. Now, Z-targeting is a great thing you can use to kill enemies, and it works really well. In general, I think combat in this game works incredibly well. Now, getting into the areas themselves, and, I'll do that in a minute. The first thing I want to discuss is the music, which is fantastic. The score is fantastic, obviously. One of my favorite game scores I've heard outside of the Mario Galaxy games. The score and sound design is absolutely fantastic, and, I really love the, music in this game. I think it looks really good. I think it sounds really good, and the game looks good as well. Now, it doesn't look great. It's aged poorly, you could say, and I will be getting into that a bit later. But, in general, the animations feel well done, the cinematics feel like they are well shot, that everything just works well with visual design. The colors mostly are appealing, everything mostly works, and that's something that I will get into a bit more in a minute. But getting into the areas themselves, and my biggest problem with the game, is the child section and dealing with things as Child Link and how hard it is to get into this game. Now, again, the slow pacing really hinders it for me. Now, I wouldn't say Link's walking speed at full stick is that much slower than Mario's, but you can't jump. You can't do jumps and dives and flips and stuff to make anything faster like you can in Mario. And the only thing you can do with Link is roll. And when you play the child sections, the dungeons themselves aren't that bad, but all the stuff you do on the overworld is so annoying. There's no way to work anywhere as Child, and you also don't have a Epona. So anywhere you have to get, you have to walk. Now, you can roll. You can also walk backwards, which is, for some reason, faster than walking forwards, or side hop, which is also a bit faster, but it's still the most tedious thing ever. Hyrule Field is vast and empty. Now, there are a few things to do. There's some enemies that come out at night. There's, a few trees and grass, and there's literally not much to do in Hyrule Field. It's massive, and it's a great first experience of, it makes the world feel big, and it's a great thing, but once you have to traverse it multiple times, once you figure out where everything is, it can get really annoying. One nice aspect of this game I do enjoy is figuring out shortcuts and how things are connected, like, oh, the Lost Woods connects to Goron City, which connects to Death Mountain Crater, and also back to Kokiri Forest. It's just kind of helpful to see how the entire world is interconnected in that area. The world does feel pretty expansive, and there is a good bit to explore with Skulltula hunting and heart pieces, both of which I did not get 100%. I did not complete this game 100%, but I did do some of the side quests, like the Goron Sword trading quests, and all of that. Now, getting into the actual gameplay, again, the combat feels really good, and the items you can get as child are kind of meh. Now, the items you can get as child, you can get things like the boomerang, the slingshot. Most ones you'll be using the most is the slingshot, and then the bombs, which for some reason you get to keep your bomb systems out, but you can't keep your slingshot. I don't know. Anyway, I really enjoy playing the game as child at first. Once I got used to playing as child, didn't want to play as adult because I got used to playing as child, but then once I got used to adult, I never wanted to go back now, which is unfortunate because the story does make you go back a couple times, even in the main quest, disregarding side quests. Now, one thing I'm going to say is, the layouts in this game, the worlds, the themes, are pretty generic, feel well done. There's a lava mountain area, there's a desert, there's the green fields, there's a forest. Anyway, the environments are nice, and I like going through them. Now, as for the dungeons themselves, the child dungeons are okay, if not kind of boring. The child section in general just feels kind of boring. Now, getting into the adult section, the weapons you have at your disposal are much better. You get things like the hook shot, which is my favorite weapon, / item / utility. Now, and you can get some magic spells as well, as child or adult. And, unfortunately, some of the things you get as adult aren't that useful, like the hammer isn't that useful, but and honestly didn't find the bow that useful outside of few specific scenarios, kind of like the hammer. But the hookshot makes up for it. The hookshot is, like, the best parts of the boomerang and slingshot combined into one, and it's amazing. And, getting into the dungeons, the adult dungeons, there are 5 temples, and in my initial playthrough, I will say that the temples I probably enjoyed playing the most were Shadow Temple and, Spirit Temple. Now, going into this, I have to talk about Fire Temple wasn't really a problem. It wasn't really a hassle to go through. It just was kind of boring to me. Forest Temple, Water Temple, and Forest Temple were the ones that took me the longest to complete. Now, I'll get into that in a minute. Now, I actually didn't really mind Water Temple once I figured out what to do. I had to look up a walkthrough to know that the Zora Tunic doesn't prevent you from drowning, and that helped me not get claustrophobic and freak out. But, anyway, after I got the Zora Tunic and figured out where to go, it wasn't that bad, except for that one time I completely didn't realize you can drop down a hole to get a key. Anyway, yeah, and I hate the boss as well, but the rest of the temple has some cool hookshot puzzles, and I like hookshots. And yeah, equipping the boots on and off is also really annoying. You have to do it in Shadow Temple as well with the hover boots, but you don't need them as much as you do in the Water Temple. Anyway, the Forest Temple. The Forest Temple! Okay. Alright, I just had no fun going through this temple, and that brings me to my second gripe with the game, outside of what I already mentioned, with the traveling. As an adult, you do get warp songs and you do get Epona, so that's helpful, but my possibly biggest gripe of the game is the way the graphics were utilized. Now, again, I don't think the game looks bad at all for the N64, but I find the muddy texturing to really hinder me. Now, again, something like Mario 64 has muddy texturing as well, but all the colors are so bright and vibrant, it's really easy to see what's what. Whereas in Ocarina of Time, it all just kind of blends together and looks really gross. And again, I'm not saying this from an aesthetic standpoint, I'm saying this from a I don't know where the fuck to go standpoint, which did happen to me a few times, and especially in the darker dungeons, I'm thinking things like the Dongo's Cavern, and especially Forest Temple, oh lord, really bothered me. I actually did enjoy going to Shadow Temple though, which is kind of funny, but yeah, not fun. But overall, my verdict, Water Temple was okay, Forest Temple sucks, and I know somebody's gonna be really, really mad at me, because I don't know, but yeah, Water Temple's okay except for that goddamn boss. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Yes, definitely play this game if you haven't played it in 2019. Play it. I don't care what version you play, just play it. Please play it. So good. Bye.